had some motivation of their own right to maintain their current pace in Conference USA, and we saw that kind of attitude play out in a big way throughout this contest. Now, Sam Houston has gotten off to tremendous starts this year. We saw that again in this game with them getting the first 8 points of the contest. Now, usually in past games, that's where MTSU has been at their best, is at the start of games. We've seen Kamari Lands get the team off to some great starts, but it was Sam Houston who took the early lead and made life tough for MTSU. Now, that kind of dynamic is a far cry from what we've seen in past games, like I mentioned, so I was very curious to see how will MTSU deal with that, not only since the Bearcats have negated that, but also they don't have the usual great start that they would have to counteract what Sam Houston has. So it's very hard as a team sometimes when you're out of your comfort zone in these tough situations to be able to manage a situation like that. And the Blue Raiders had to face that kind of deficit head on in this game. In a spot like this, you need somebody to lift you up and be that difference maker who can help pluck the team out from a tough time. And thankfully for MTSU, they had that in Alec Oglesby. He got on the board quickly. He was followed by Torrey Alston, and then MTSU was kind of off to the races after a couple minutes. I've been thinking a lot about the end of the season, getting towards the end of the year for MTSU men's basketball, what it means, and how are they going to contend in Conference USA play. And I think it comes down to a couple of guys, but especially Alec Oglesby. He's a guy that I think people really need to take a deep focus on as we get closer towards the end of the year. I think Oglesby is a guy that has the best explosivity on the squad because when he is on, and I mean really on, I think he's one of the better players on the team. I've said it before that he can channel that explosivity and that ability to take over and dominate a game maybe better than anybody else on the squad. And I think he's only going to get better in the future, especially as this season gets towards its final few regular season games. It's going to be tough on any player or team to be able to counteract what Alec Oglesby is able to bring to the floor. He's also a kickstarter at many points for this offense. We've seen many times throughout the season where MTSU may not be at their best overall when it comes to their offensive output. They start to figure things out more and more as the game goes on, and by the end of the game, they get Alec Oglesby going, and all of a sudden, they're right where they need to be. And he's been that kickstarter to get their rhythm and get themselves in motion on many occasions this season. So Alec Oglesby is a guy that I think people kind of underrate to some degree, but he's certainly a guy that deserves a lot of accolades, a lot of applause, and deserves a lot of attention as we get further and further into this season. Now, I just talked about Alec being a kickstarter, and that's what we saw play out in the latter portions of the first half, because after he was able to score, MTSU got 7 consecutive points, started to settle in just a little bit, and began to play more neck and neck with the Bearcats. They ended up tying the game at 12 points apiece, but then, much like the start of the game, Sam Houston roared back and got 8 straight points to take the lead back in a big way. It's not just the great starts that make Sam Houston who they are, but also the great efficiency in their runs and their ability to just put 5, 6, 7, 8 points in a row on the scoreboard. That is very hard for any team to be able to overcome, and Sam Houston, they just do that on the regular. That's how they've gotten so good in Conference USA this year, and how they've taken this big leap in what is their 4th year in CUSA basketball. It's very rare to see a team take a massive blow, or run in this case, and just put that to the side in order to flip the momentum. That's a sign of a team that certainly has championship DNA, can play at a championship level, and has a championship roster, and most importantly, a mentality. Sam Houston showed that. They had a mentality to fight the battle, be right there on the front lines, and be ready for whatever MTSU threw their way, even when they started to make a little bit of a comeback as the game moved forward. So don't get it twisted. MTSU is facing a true contender on this night. Sam Houston, I know they've got 5 conference losses, but there's a reason why CUSA has a lot of parity this year. There are a lot of good teams, and Sam Houston is certainly one of the better ones. So they've had to deal with some tough tests, and I think in many ways, those losses that they suffered maybe earlier in CUSA play have made them a better overall team as we've gotten further down the line. So Sam Houston, certainly a team that's showing a lot of grit right now. But from that point, Middle Tennessee, they did what they could to start to chip away at that looming deficit. There does come a point, though, where it almost feels like it's going to be an impossible mountain to climb with how well the team on the other side is responding. The thing about the Blue Raiders' comeback attempt is that Sam Houston very rarely gave them windows or sluggish stretches, especially towards that middle part of the game where they could begin to cut into that deficit just a little bit. I would say after the first few minutes of the opening half, it was a pretty evenly played game. It's just that Sam Houston already had that cushion, and they were able to somewhat sit on that throughout the rest of the game. We see that a lot in men's basketball, and really in basketball in general, is where teams are pretty evenly matched, except for maybe one 7 or 8 minute window, and all of a sudden you get down to the end of the game and you're thinking, wow, we've been neck and neck with this team for the last however many 20 minutes. How in the world are we not tied with them and we're down by 20 points? Well, it was one bad stretch that completely decided the game. I mentioned that before on the show. It can really make or break your game and make or break your chances in conference play. It's who seizes that moment when you have the chance to switch that momentum over to your side. Because the teams that do are the ones that end up winning more often than not. We saw Sam Houston was able to do that, and that's how they got on top 44-32 at the half, is that they were able to continue to sit on that lead and respond to what MTSU had. But, as we've seen time and time again this season, they are not, Middle Tennessee that is, they are not a team that's going to go down quietly. The great thing about Middle that we've been talking about is they have this innate ability to respond. They did that again in the second half of this game. You get the opening 6 points of the half going MT's way, and then you get great contributions from Chris Loof, Javin Carter, and Sean Smith. We'll get more into Loof and especially Sean Smith later, but man, those guys had some special nights, especially inside late in that half, in the second half. They were big difference makers for MTSU. And those are guys that I think the Blue Raiders have been waiting to step up just a little bit more. Not to say they haven't been stepping up, but maybe just even more so as time goes on. Sean Smith has certainly done that towards the end of the season. Chris Loof and Javin Carter getting better and better with each passing game. Loof especially, he was huge late in this game. Again, we'll talk more about that in just a minute. I felt like when MTSU got that production from those players, it was sort of an off to the races moment after that. And I feel like the confidence level for MTSU really began to creep up at this point, and you saw them be able to put more and more dominant stretches together towards the end of the game. We've said all year that when this offense gets on a roll, they are really hard to stop, and that was once again the case here in the second half. At one point, MTSU actually had the lead cut all the way down to within 1 point. And you're talking about a massive momentum shift, a massive flip of the switch if you're able to do something like that. It is really hard, especially against that high level of an opponent, to come back from a 14-point deficit on the road, mind you. And with that big trip that they had to take to Huntsville, Texas, they looked at that deficit at the half, and they still managed to cut that down to 1 point. This MTSU men's team, hey, they're undaunted. They're going to deal with adversity head on, and they're going to make it work to the best of their ability. They did it again here, and again, they showed that they're going to respond despite the deficits they face. I can say some things about the MTSU men's basketball team, but one thing you can't say is that they don't fight with everything they have, because a lot of teams would have just forgotten it in that situation. This Blue Raider team, they did not, and I've said it before. When they're playing at that level, I think they're one of the best teams in Conference USA, and I believe they showed it here. Unfortunately, despite all the great efforts they had, it just wasn't enough at the end of the game. It did not help that they had to keep withstanding those body blows from the Bearcats, and man, Jacob Walker gave them a lot of trouble on the night. If you watched the second half, you saw how much that his presence on the floor really made an impact in this game, and he's been huge for Sam Houston all season, but this was certainly one of his finest hours on this Wednesday night contest. He ends up going for 20 points, and really, he puts the exclamation point on the game and helps the Bearcats to a 78-70 win. Sam Houston maintains pace towards the top of the Conference USA standings. They maintain their second place position in the CUSA standings as well. Now, takeaways from this one. In spite of this loss, you had some really solid performances on the MTSU side. Torrey Alston ends up with 16 points in this game. Chris Loof, like I said, he had a spectacular night. 15 points. That's just one away from his career high. So what a big night against a really good opponent for Chris Loof to show out. And if you get more production from him towards the end of this season, I think that's nothing but a positive sign for MTSU. In fact, though, you had 4 Blue Raiders reach double-digit point totals in this game. So offensively, they had the production they needed. I mean, 70 points is nothing to scoff at, especially against a pretty solid Bearcats defense. Again, though, the problem was defense. That's been the thing as of late that has cost MTSU in a lot of these games. They've given up 75, 78, 66, maybe around like close to 80 points, depending on if the game goes into overtime. They've had a lot of games where they've given up a lot of points, and it has cost them late in contest. That is the hurdle. That's the big thing they've got to find a way to overcome. How do we play more efficiently on defense and give ourselves a better chance late in these games so we're not having to come back from a big deficit that's almost insurmountable? I think that's the biggest question that MTSU has to ask themselves as we get closer towards the end of this year. Now, the loss last night, certainly not ideal. But like I mentioned yesterday many times on the show, you have to keep the grand perspective part of this in mind. Again, you're talking about one of the top teams in the conference. You had to go into their house in order to get the job done. That is a very tall order, especially with how good Sam Houston is playing right now. This was going to be a tough ask no matter what. The bigger talking point to me is looking at the CUSA standings, where MTSU is now 9th overall with a couple of teams slotted right beside them. You've got FIU, UTEP, Missouri State, and Kennesaw State all within just one game of the Blue Raiders right now. What that means is that margins, especially late in this season, are going to be extremely thin in these final few weeks, and wins, I've also said this before, are going to matter now more than they have all season long. Now, here's the good news for MTSU. They got a prime opportunity on Saturday when they play Delaware at home. Currently, they're in the cellar of CUSA. They're last place in the conference standings. If I'm not mistaken, their record is, I think they've only got 3 wins in CUSA play. I should have looked at that earlier, but needless to say, they're last in the CUSA standings. So if you get a win against them, that could give you the momentum and drive that you need the rest of the way in this season. A lot of times, it only takes just one game to get your team in that right frame of mind, in that right mindset to go off and do special things towards the end of the year. We've heard Nick McDevitt talk about that before as well. If you put one in front of you, get one win, all of a sudden, you may be in position to do more special things. And like I said, you got a lot of teams nearby, so you can move up in the conference standings in a big way quickly if you play your cards right. So I'm excited to see how MTSU handles this upcoming stretch, and I'm hoping that they're going to be able to put their pieces together, figure this thing out. I think they will, and if they do, and if they start playing up to their potential, this could be a special team at the end of the year. When we come back, we'll talk MTSU women's basketball. They've got a big game in the 100 Miles of Hate against Western Kentucky on Saturday. We've got MTSU baseball taking on St. Bonaventure, and MTSU men's tennis with the battle in the Borough. All that and more coming up on the other side of this break on All Sports Talk.
Lace up your best kicks for a night of impact benefiting First Shot. Join us for the annual Sneaker Ball presented by Venture Express. Spend Sunday, April 26th with NFL Hall of Famer and Super Bowl MVP Marcus Allen. The event kicks off at 6 with a VIP meet and greet at 5. Reserve your table today. Call Coach Andy Herzer at 615-631-5312. We'll see you at the Sneaker Ball benefiting First Shot on April 26th.
This is a paid legal ad.
I'm attorney John Day. Many lawyers are quick to say that they'll take the insurance company to court for you. But how do you know if the lawyer is an experienced trial attorney? Ask them if they're certified. And in order to be certified, you have to have tried a lot of cases, taken a 2-day test, and get recommendations from judges and other lawyers. My wife Joy and I are both certified as civil trial specialists, and we have the experience to get the answers, justice, and compensation your family deserves. Call the law offices of John Day.
Clark's Auction Company will get you top dollar for your property.
Auctions are easy, fast, and profitable.
I've always been a big fan of auctions. Get instant sale, no contingencies.
That means the sale of your property won't depend on an inspection, financing, or appraisals.
I've known the guys over there my entire life.
Call Parks Auction and Realty or visit parksauction.com.
Clark's Auction Company will get you top dollar for your property.
Parks Auction Company, committed to auction excellence.
Sold it to you, 27.5.
When Roscoe Brown started his local family business in 1940, he knew the importance of treating customers like family, and now 80-plus years later, that same commitment continues. Our trained, certified, and insured technicians come to your home and do the job right the first time. Roscoe Brown does heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and insulation. Call Roscoe Brown and get that needed checkup today.
Roscoe Brown.
RoscoeBrown.com. Hi, I'm Wade Hayes, owner of Toots Good Food and Fun. I strongly believe that volunteers make a positive difference in the quality of life here in our community.
State Farm Agent Michael Busey serves as Vice Chair for Main Street Murfreesboro's Advisory Board. He is essentially the board's steady second in command, the person who keeps things moving when the chair can't be there, and helps to share the leadership load. Michael Busey, a dedicated volunteer with Main Street Murfreesboro, whom people can count on.
At Toots, we strongly believe that it's important for every one of our citizens to give some of their time and talent back into the community. And we want to honor these individuals with a Toots gift certificate good at any of our Rutherford County locations. 860 Northwest Broad Street, on Church Street in the Barfield area, in Smyrna on Sam Ridley, and Toots West on Franklin Road at Rucker Lane.
Good afternoon. It's definitely crowded though here at Times Square. To the eastbound, trying to get past Snowmansville Pike. It's cranking up even more in northbound. 65 right now through Madison. A little bit slow on and off there by Rivergate Parkway. Cloudy your radar as you travel out I-40 throughout certain parts of Wilson counties this afternoon, especially out through the Mount Juliet area. Stein Dental Care in Nashville. That's where I go, and so should you. If you're looking for a great new dentist for this new year, that's Stein Dental Care. I'm Commander Chuck with your on-time traffic.
It's all sports talk from the Good Neighbor Network, FM 1019, 100.5, AM 1450, wgnsradio.com, and Big G TV.
And welcome back here on All Sports Talk, the one and only All Sports Talk on this Thursday, February 19th, 2026. They say that winter is beginning to shift a little bit, and we're coming towards the end, or at least getting closer. Well, at least that's what I thought. But apparently conditions next week, as I was looking over the break, are going to be a little bit colder. We're talking back in the 40s, back in the 50s. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But hey, what are you going to do? Things don't last forever. You got to take what's in front of you. At least that's what my parents always told me, and we'll do the same. And we're going to keep bringing you the best stuff that we can on All Sports Talk, and hopefully everybody will stay warm next week. But, I've always been one of those guys that I don't hate the cold necessarily. Like I've said before, the only thing that I don't like about the cold is when it's too cold to run in the morning. That's when it's a problem, because I'm an outdoor runner. I don't like to be on a treadmill. I like to run on the open road and experience that. So I'm hoping that maybe warm conditions will stick here after a while. One thing that we do know for sure, that's MTSU women's basketball, and that they are thriving right now, to say the least. Let's talk a little bit about that. They've got a big stretch to end the season coming up. We know their next game is going to be against Western Kentucky on Saturday in Bowling Green, and I feel like as far as confidence goes, they have to be feeling pretty good about how this one, you would think, would work out for them. Now, if you'll hit the rewind button with me to Saturday, January 31st, you'll remember the first time that these two teams faced off, and you might remember as well that it was an absolute blowout and a half for the team in blue. Now, listen, I know the score says that it was 81-58, but to be honest with you, it felt like it was a 40-point or 50-point game in terms of separation. It was even worse than the score indicated, and that's not to, throw shots anybody's way, but man, what MTSU women's basketball was able to do in that game was nothing short of sensational. I've been to a few of these games in person this year, and this was certainly the best that I have seen MTSU women's basketball, the Lady Raiders, play all season long. It just felt like as far as ball movement, getting people open, and getting opportunities, they were doing that so easily and so effortlessly. You just don't get that every game, especially not in the middle point in the season, but I think ever since that game, and maybe it wasn't just that game, but I think that was a big part of it, MTSU women's basketball has been playing much more efficiently and much more as a team conglomerate that has really shifted into another gear. As far as shooting goes, the first time that these two teams played, it may have been some of the best that the Lady Raiders have managed all season. It felt like they couldn't miss in that first half. And a lot of that is thanks to Elena Contreras. I mean, every time you would turn around in this game, Elena Contreras is training another three-pointer. It was just, every single time. Boom, 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 boom. It was just easy for her. I think she ended up, getting, I want to say 4 or 5 threes, maybe 6 threes in this game. And again, she just did that all first half, kept drilling three-pointers in Western's face. Lady Hilltoppers really couldn't do a whole lot to stop her. Excuse me. Here are some words of wisdom to anyone in CUSA that has to go up against her. Make sure that you guard the arc because she is going to make you pay. We just saw her get 28 points, new career high against Kennesaw State last Saturday, and if she is in that zone again a couple days from now, it could be a really long night for Western Kentucky considering the kind of level she's been playing at as of late. So, it goes without saying, but Elena Contreras is certainly a player to watch in this contest for MTSU, and I would expect her to have another great night here in this one if she's in that zone again. Wasn't just her in that game, though. Macy Pfeiffer was incredible down low and shooting the ball as well. Blair Bogus did well enough also to earn, say it with me now, another CUSA Freshman of the Week award. That is the game that, to me, showed the full capability of MTSU this season, and like I said, what they look like at their peak. For context as well, in case you forgot what that was right after, that was the 500th and 501st win for Rick Insell. That's a tongue twister. 501st win for Rick Insell on the season. Just the week prior, he had gotten his 500th win. So that could have very easily been a letdown spot for MTSU, and yet it wasn't. Yet they kept playing at a high level. That, to me, that signals something. If you're able to have that big of an emotional game just a week prior, and the next week you come out and you look that good, that tells me you've got a team that's focused, that believes the message, and is locked in to a huge degree. Just this past week, Elena Contreras earned Conference Player of the Week, well-deserved for what she was able to do against Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State, and Macy Pfeiffer also got CUSA Freshman of the Week for herself. So needless to say, that talent is showing up, and the conference recognizes that as well, these players being rewarded as they should be for what they're doing. And offensively, like I said, I don't think they've looked better this season. Now, Western Kentucky has been in a bit of a lull as of late, still trying to fully find their footing at this later portion of the season, and if anything, I think they're on the prowl for an upset. They had a rough go of it in CUSA this season, 6-18 overall, along with being 2-11 in conference play, which is right towards the bottom of the standings. The biggest thing, to be honest, is that Western has just lacked offensive consistency and the ability to get three-point shots. So on one side, you've got a team who has just made a living off of getting three-point shots here in CUSA play, and on the other side, you've got a team that really struggles with that. That kind of talks to you or tells you about the mismatch that is in this game and why MTSU in many ways is, I would say, favored pretty heavily to take this one on the road. When you look at the current scoring statistics for Western Kentucky, averaging just 57 points per game right now, they have 28% as their mark in three-point shooting. So that kind of tells you they have struggled to get open looks. They don't move the ball as well as MTSU probably does. And in addition, they don't really have a player who just jumps out and gets you a good 15, 16 points a night. They have no scorers right now who are scoring above 10 points per game. So then again, that explosivity, there it is, that they just don't seem to have when it comes to scoring the basketball, and it's been a problem for them. What we saw in the last game versus MTSU was that the Lady Raiders were able to make a consistent effort on defense to keep Western contained inside the post, where they like to try and find most of their scoring. That's where the Hilltoppers are usually at their best, is when they're in that low post, getting some opportunities near the basket. We know that if that continues to work in this game for MTSU, Rick Insell is not going to hesitate to use that again. I would say that he's probably going to go back to that until Western can prove that they have a way to counteract it. Because if you've got that sort of advantage, then you're not going to change that, or at least I wouldn't think you would. I foresee it being very hard for Western to find more clearance in this game compared to the first game as well. I would guess that MTSU is going to play just as good, if not better defense, because again, they've had more weeks of experience. They're playing overall better as a team right now, and they've already seen Western once this year, and we've said this a lot, but if you know anything about Rick Insell teams, whenever they play a team a second time, usually they're going to win that game. It's hard to beat the same team twice when it comes to MTSU and the Lady Raiders. So the biggest thing that I would worry about in this situation is just keeping a team focused and on the right track. In this spot, you have a lot of optics that are pointed your way if you are MTSU, and it's easy in a situation like this to take an opponent lightly and get tripped up. one of the worst tendencies that a team can have is to look past an opponent, and it's imperative that MTSU doesn't do that. I would say, though, that they've got a coach who's going to make it as hard as possible to see something like that happen in Western Kentucky. Rick Insell squads are usually the last teams to end up in a situation like that and look past a team. And I would say that despite the week-long break and despite already beating them once and beating them down pretty good, I don't see that happening here. If MTSU can get a big win, that will be big for their hopes of CUSA, for maintaining momentum, and possibly getting back in contention for that cherished number 1 seed, which they are right on the door of. It's going to come down to execution and just staying focused, but I have no doubt that the Lady Raiders are going to do just that, so looking forward to it. We will see if they can get the job done. That game will be right here on WGNS on Saturday with tip-off coming at 2. Pre-game, if I'm not mistaken, is at 1:30, so make sure you check that out right here on the Good Neighbor Network. MTSU baseball back in action this weekend as well, taking on St. Bonaventure. This is a big series coming up. What I think a lot of people miss about this Blue Raider baseball squad, that is a hard Blue Raider baseball squad. Lots of B's and lots of rolling of the R's there. But one thing that people miss about them is trying to figure out exactly who they are at this very moment and maybe making assumptions about who they could be. There is still a bit of a mystery to me to be uncovered with this team because one series and a midweek game, yeah, it's going to reveal some things, but it's not going to tell you everything in a given situation. There are a few important questions that we need to answer with this MTSU baseball team, and the first thing that we need to learn more about is the pitching. There were some good signs over the weekend for MTSU, but there were also some moments where some people may be curious about whether or not the tendency was an aberration or a trend. I said yesterday that it is important to not jump to conclusions about a team or a pitcher because there's a whole season in front of us. And these pitchers, they understand that. They may not be showing their best stuff early on in the year. They may be experimenting a little bit, still trying to find out who they want to be in this new year. Even Paul Skeens has off games. Even Clayton Kershaw has off games. I think that we could have seen some more of that this weekend from MTSU. I tend to think that some of the missteps they had pitching was more a result of just not quite being dialed in completely. Not to say they weren't mentally prepared, but just being used to game time and the game atmosphere and used to that sort of environment. So I think that will shift just a little bit this weekend. It's an assumption to make, but it's an assumption that I think is going to prove right here in the end. So can MTSU get their pitching moving in the right direction, and can they couple that with how dynamic the bats have looked so far? Because the bats, well, they've been in fuego as of late this year. You had guys like Dean O'Neill and Brett Rogers over the weekend and on Tuesday who were awesome. And when it came to getting consistent hits and getting guys on base, they were top of the line for sure. Not only that, but the home run ball looks really nice for MTSU as well. And I think that's going to be a huge asset and a huge tool for them throughout the rest of the season. Already with 8 home runs on the year, guys such as Tyler Minnick showing up with his power bat, I think you have to be excited about what they showed if you are a Blue Raider fan. And I would guess that the home run ball and those bats are not going anywhere. It is so impressive to see what they can do when you get a hit here, and then you just stack that on top of that. MTSU is really good about that against Bellarmine and Alabama A&M. I mean, they've already got 2 run rule victories on the season. I know it's against not the statistically toughest of competition, but it's still, got choked up there. It is still impressive to see them be able to accomplish that, and I would guess that's going to be something we'll see more of as this season moves forward. Now, St. Bonaventure is 2-2 on the season, looking to be an interesting matchup for MTSU. Now, if you're a fan of Blue Raider baseball, then you'll remember that these two teams have faced off quite a bit since, I believe, 2023. They've faced off, I want to say, every season since then and made this annual series, they've made this series annual is what I'm trying to say. In years past, they've been overmatched against the Blue Raiders, but will this year be any different? Lone series so far for the Bonnies was against UNC Asheville on the road in 4 games, which they split with them. Now, they're a very hard team to gauge just because they've been very hot and cold so far this year. We've seen St. Bonaventure score as many as 10 runs, but they can also be shut out, as they were last weekend against UNC Asheville. So you had one game where they were scoring 10, 11 runs and winning, and you had another game where they got shut out and couldn't get anything on the scoreboard. Here's the one consistent thing that I think is going to help MTSU here, and that is the weakness of pitching for St. Bonaventure. They gave up at least 5 runs in each of the 4 games they've played this season, and if that trend continues, that is really good. That spells something really good for MTSU's bats because, again, they've been so good. They've been consistent. They've already been scoring quite a bit, and I would guess that they're going to be able to do that again if St. Bonaventure is already struggling with the pitching this much. So that's an obvious mismatch and should be a huge strength, I would think, for MTSU baseball in this game. I do think that this series comes down to how well MTSU's pitching looks out there as to whether or not they dominate this series the way that I know they want to and a lot of the fans want to. Now, we can't know for certain if they're going to establish that consistency, but if I had to guess, I think they're going to be looking pretty darn good on the mound this weekend. I think a lot of it is just putting behind what you had last week, putting that in the rearview mirror, focusing on this series and making sure you take care of business. And I tend to believe that Jerry Meyer's squad is going to do that. So that series coming up this weekend, go on out to the ballpark or check out the audio broadcast with the voice of the Blue Raider baseball team, Dick Palmer. He'll take you the rest of the way home for the St. Bonaventure series. So make sure you check that out. Looking forward to seeing them in action. We will come back in just a minute and talk MTSU men's tennis battle in the Burrow Invitational Tournament, and then we will preview the NASCAR Cup Series race from Atlanta, as well as have the Blue Raider Insider Report, all that and more on the other side of this break.
You know, everyone has a more. First, it's a pony, then to be on the cheer squad. Your more grows up just like you do, but your more can still carry you away or make you cheer. At First Bank, banking local gets you more. More of our time, more access to local bankers, more flexibility, and more product choices. Because getting more empowered and confident helps you pursue your more. That never grows old. First Bank. Bank local, get more. Member FDIC.
In Rutherford County, you know how much it means to have neighbors you can count on. I'm State Farm Agent Andy Wommel, here to help life go right when you combine home and auto insurance. Call me today at 615-890-0850 and let me save you money and time. Your home, your auto, together they're where life happens. I'm State Farm Agent Andy Wommel. It's smart to protect them together to help life go right. Give me a call at 615-890-0850 and let me help you save by combining your home and auto.
The residents at Stones River Manor love the activities and the environment.
They have everything. They have exercise class. The activity center has the Bible study that I like very much. Everyone is so friendly. They really want to make you happy here.
Stones River Manor, serving the community since 1977.
And you have the little thing around your neck that you can press a button if you need help right away. I feel very safe here.
Stones River Manor in Murfreesboro, near the intersection of Haynes Drive and Memorial Boulevard.
Hi, this is Nick Hayes with Toots Restaurants, and we want to thank you for 40 great years of good food and fun.
At Toots, we still have the same specials, the same quality, the same portion sizes, even after 40 years.
And we have the best kids menu in town.
And our family would like to thank this community for supporting Toots for 40 years.
Thank you for dining with us since 1985.
Thank you, Rutherford County.
Thank you for dining with us for 40 years.
Next on All Sports Talk, it's the Blue Raider Insider Report with Chip Walters of Exit Realty, Bob Lamb & Associates.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. We'll start with men's basketball, where the Blue Raiders fell to Sam Houston on the road by a score of 78-70 last night. With the loss, Middle now 12-14 overall, 6-9 in Conference USA. Sam Houston now 17-9 overall, 9-6 in the league. They have now won 10 of their last 12 and are 10-1 at home. Alec Oglesby opened the scoring for the Blue Raiders and had a good night. Torrey Alston broke the scoring drought with a jumper after Middle had fallen behind 8-0. Middle Tennessee tried to chip away at the Sam Houston lead for the rest of the first half, but went to the locker room down 12, 44-32. Middle scored in the opening 6 points of the second half. Chris Loof started that half, scoring off the glass. Middle cut the lead to 1 won, but could not take the lead or get any closer. At that point, Sam Houston was able to push the lead out, and they grabbed the win by the score of 78-70. Coming up next for Middle, it's Delaware at home Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock. It is Legends Weekend. A ton of former players coming back. We're celebrating the 2016 NCAA Tournament and Conference USA Tournament champ team that beat Michigan State. Get your tickets now for that. That'll be Saturday at 1 p.m. Elsewhere in the league last night, Delaware gave up a big lead to Western Kentucky, and Western won in overtime 88-87. Jacksonville State lost on the road at Louisiana Tech 77-71, and it was Kennesaw winning on the road at Missouri State 91-87. There is one game tonight. FIU will play at Liberty. As a matter of fact, that game just underway on the CBS Sports Network. The conference standings now, Liberty currently 14-0. Sam Houston all alone in second place by 2 games. They're 10-5. Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, and Jacksonville State tied for third. Kennesaw State and Missouri State are tied for sixth at 7-8. Middle and UTEP are tied for eighth. FIU is in 10th place. Then New Mexico State and Delaware. If the tournament were held today, neither team would make it. Women's basketball, one game already complete today. FIU beat Delaware 62-36. 3 other games coming up later tonight. Sam Houston will be at Kennesaw, Liberty at Missouri State, and Louisiana Tech at Jacksonville State. The Lady Raiders will be on the road Saturday after having the midweek off. They'll travel to Bowling Green to take on Western Kentucky. That will be a 2 o'clock start at Diddle Arena. All right, men's tennis. The Blue Raiders return home to host 3 matches this weekend as part of the Battle of the Borough. The Blue Raiders will face Utah Friday at 5 o'clock, Old Dominion's Monarchs on Saturday at 2, and the Rice Owls Sunday at 2. Middle Tennessee sophomore Eric Creevy and Jonas Dzopiak have been recognized as the Conference USA Doubles Team of the Week for the first time this year. Seniors Andre Horak and Kareem Alameen are currently ranked number 38 in doubles, while the Blue Raider men hold a team ranking of 52. Checking a couple of other things before we wrap up. Middle Tennessee women's golf earned its 4th top 5 finish of the season at the Texas Golf Throwdown this week at the Woodlands Country Club. The team shot a 913 overall, with its best round coming in the final day at +9 287. And also coming up this weekend, Blue Raider baseball is at home Friday, Saturday, Sunday as they host St. Bonaventure at 3-1-1 respectively. All right, that's it for today. We'll have another update tomorrow to wrap up the week here on the Big G, WGNS.
It's all sports talk from the Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9, 100.5, AM 1450, wgnsradio.com, and Big G TV.
Thank you, Chipper. This is the Good Neighbor Network, WGNS, and this is all sports talk on a Thursday night, Thursday, February 12th. 2026. As Chip mentioned, MTSU men's basketball at this point already in progress. I don't have a live score update on the game, but of course you can make sure to stay tuned to WGNS to get that as time goes on. And of course, tonight, women's basketball is in Murfreesboro at the Murphy Center, hosting Jacksonville State in what should be an awesome game. Tip-off will be at 6:30 with pregame starting immediately after the conclusion of the show tonight. Let's talk briefly about MTSU men's tennis. They've got a couple big matchups this weekend. First up, they take on Louisville, and that's going to have a curious dynamic for MTSU, considering that they have not played since February 5th against Virginia Tech. Now, that's not a huge break necessarily, but for this team that plays 2 or 3 matches a weekend, that is a long time by their standards. Now, they were supposed to play Alabama on Sunday, February 8th, but that match has now been postponed. So, how does MTSU respond to the layoff, and will that have an effect on this match? I would imagine not, because of Jimmy Borendame's focus and how that translates to this team, but you can never know for sure. Now, it's up to the players to respond to what he's teaching them. Knowing Jimmy and knowing how he operates, I'd say that his team is going to be dialed in. They'll be ready for it, but they're going to have a pretty good test in being dialed in for this match. You've already had several players have the CUSA Athlete of the Week honor dished out to them, and you've now got some of the doubles teams showing out as well. There was one of the pairings for MTSU just got named doubles team of the week, and I can't can't for the life of me think about who it was right now, but that took place earlier this week as well, so it just continues the awards due to flow in for the MTSU men's tennis team. Don't forget, they now have wins against Virginia Tech, Harvard, and UAB, among any others, but they're still looking for a win against an ACC team this year. They could get that. They're taking on Louisville this weekend to start on Friday night. That'll be coming up tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. Cardinals are 9-3 on the season. Despite that strong record, they have been tripped up by a few teams. Cornell, Notre Dame, and Kentucky have all beaten them, none of whom, as of right now, are ranked. Now, I think that despite the record, this is a winnable match for MTSU. When you look at comparative matchups, MTSU already beat Harvard earlier this season, who's a pretty common rival of Cornell, so Ivy League advantage goes to MTSU as far as common opponents. Now, they haven't played anybody like Notre Dame or Kentucky yet, but it's still an interesting one for the Blue Raiders. And I misspoke earlier when I said they hadn't beaten an ACC team, because they have. They beat Virginia Tech this past weekend, who is an ACC school, by the way, just to make sure, in case you didn't already know that. But a second win against an ACC team would be more accurate. But they have an opportunity to do that. But it won't be the only match they have this weekend. They go to play Oklahoma State in Stillwater, who has been a thorn in the side of MTSU before. I remember a few years ago they came in and beat MTSU at the ATC, which is not an easy thing to do. They've got a solid record of 6-2 overall on the season and are undefeated at home. 2 losses are to Yale and Princeton on the road, and again, MTSU does have a win over an Ivy League opponent, which Oklahoma State does not. But that doesn't mean everything. It's just something to know. Now, the Pokes, they are charging hard late in this year. Dehydrated. And they just picked up a 4-3 win over Arkansas and a 7-0 win over Creighton before that. That's called a bagel, by the way, in tennis. Now, MTSU going all the way to Stillwater is going to be a heck of a trip for the Blue Raiders. That is a long way to go for any sort of game or any sort of match. And not to diminish that, but you've also got the Louisville match ahead of that the day before. So you're talking about playing Louisville on Friday night at home, then flying to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State just 2 days later. So that is a really hard back-to-back against 2 power teams, and that seems like on paper it may be too much to bear for MTSU just from a logistics standpoint. However, we've seen this program do this before. They have come out into stretches like this and come out the other side with victories in both matches. I believe they certainly have the capability to do that again. I think on paper they certainly have a lot of matchups that would favor them. I think winning the doubles point in both matches is going to be key, because I trust them to get three or so singles, but asking 4 or 5 of those is going to be really difficult for MTSU in both of those matchups. So winning the doubles point, which I think they will do, will be a huge thing for the Blue Raiders if they get it. And if they get both wins, it's going to be a defining stretch in 2026 for them. If they win, I think they've got a really interesting path moving forward, potentially to an NCAA tournament berth. So we'll see how MTSU handles the Cardinals and the Cowboys. And now, the grand finale of the show tonight is the first race of the NASCAR Cup Series season, the Daytona 500. Yes, sir, it is this weekend, and boogity, 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 in the words of Darrell Waltrip, it is great to be back. Now, the duels, a.k.a. the Twin 125s, are tonight. That will set up the qualifying order, or at least the rest of the qualifying order in this race. But we do now know that the 500 is going to have Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe on the front row. Qualifying was last night, by the way, and that is who got the best of it. Now, of course, Kyle Busch is a sentimental favorite to win the Daytona 500. He has not won it, though, in 20 tries. Kind of like a certain other NASCAR bad boy who hadn't won the Daytona 500 in 20 tries. So maybe Kyle Busch will follow that script. Will Kyle be able to win the 500? We'll see. Time will tell. Now, here's another question, and Willie brought this up last night on the show. Can William Byron get 3 in a row? Now, that's going to be a really hard thing to manage. Byron really good in these situations, but it's certainly a lot to ask in this matchup. Or in this race, I should say. Been saying matchup quite a bit tonight. This race could have the impact of rain to consider as well, with showers in the area scheduled for the afternoon, which it's honestly, and this is the unfortunate thing, it's kind of been the standard for the Rain-Tona 500, as I'm now calling it, because every single year it seems like rain impacts it in some way. I think for the last 5 Daytona 500s, have had rain come into play, which it is Florida, and I get it. It's going to rain, but man, I think people just want to see clear conditions on race day and everything go the way it's supposed to, because everything looks great leading up to the race. Duel should be fine tonight. Truck race should be fine Friday night. ARCA and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, got to say O'Reilly Auto Parts now, on Saturday looks good. It's just the Sunday race, the Daytona 500, that looks like it may have some rain affected. So fingers crossed that moves out. Just do your rain dance, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully it'll work out. But there are a lot of great storylines coming into this race. Connor Zilic, with his first full season, going to be racing for Trackhouse this year. 19-year-old phenom, expecting him to break out in a big way, hopefully in his rookie season. Corey Heim, defending Truck Series champion, being one of the fastest cars on the board, despite not having a full-time ride, which I think is wild that he doesn't. And you got Justin Allgaier already locked in for Junior Motorsports on speed. Tony Stewart and Cletus McFarland, both in the truck race. You got tremendous storylines all around. So check out all the stuff this weekend, because it's going to be a fantastic weekend at Daytona. But I know what you're here for. You want to hear my prediction, I would say, for this race. Let's see if I can put my money where my mouth is. Now, my final prediction for this race is that we're going to see intensity from the start. If rain is on the horizon, expect these guys to be driving like the mortgages do. I do expect that desperation will lead to an early big one within the first 50 laps. Yes, I think the big one is going to happen within the first 50 laps, maybe the first of a couple big ones, but we're going to see a big one in the first 50 laps of the race because of that looming threat of rain. I think it's just going to make drivers more antsy, a little more skittish, and could lead to a big crash. Now, I hope not, but I'm being realistic here. From that, I have to ask who makes it through the crash and who is going to be out front late. I think the Penske cars have a knack for being in the right place at the right time. They're usually always in the decision, or at least close to the decision of the 500. And like I said last night, I've got a feeling that there's a certain guy who's going to be in position late who is a Penske car. But to me, this race comes down to three guys: Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and the aforementioned Penske driver, Ryan Blaney. I think one of those three will definitely win this 500. But I think Ryan Blaney, who's been on the doorstep time and time again, he's going to make his way through that first big one. He's going to set himself up late. Don't know if he's going to have any help from his teammates. We'll see if they're still in the race. Depends on if Cindric and Logano, avoid the big one, kind of like Blaney in this situation. But I think he's going to be in the mix. I think Busch will as well. I think Hamlin will as well. These three have a shootout to the line. Hopefully won't crash. Hopefully we get a nice clean finish all the way to the start-finish line. I think Blaney gets it done in a great finish and celebrates with the champagne and maybe the rain falling down on him at Daytona Beach. Well, that does it for the show here on Thursday night. But, folks, we will be back with another great edition coming up next week on Wednesday. We'll also be back on Thursday, so you won't have to miss us for too long here on All Sports Talk. And by the way, coming up in just a few minutes, MTSU women's basketball versus Jacksonville State at home tonight. Pregame is at 6 o'clock, tip-off at 6:30. Make sure you stay tuned right after the conclusion of this show. All right, that's all we've got, so we'll see you next week. So long, everybody, and have an electric night. This has been All Sports Talk.
This is Chip Walters, and I'm honored to be your 2024 MTAR Realtor of the Year. I'm with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates, and like many of you, I've seen the real estate market shift and change. People often ask, Chip, what's really going on? Well, that's a great question, and I believe in answering with solid, factual data. So let's cut through some of the noise. I invite you to reach out. Let's have a conversation about your real estate goals and the current market trends in your neighborhood. You can find all my contact information at choosechip.net.
Your pet is more than just a pet. They're your family's fearless protector, your fetching athlete, and your crumbs on the floor detector. The warm, snuggly heartbeat at your feet. Hello, I'm State Farm Agent Deb Insel, and I understand why your pet means so much to you. Did you know that State Farm and Trupanion have teamed up to give your furry family members the protection they deserve? Pet medical insurance. It's another way State Farm is here to help life go right for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's time for the Doug Young Educator of the Month, proudly sponsored by City Tile and Floor Covering on Spring Street. We're over at Siegel Middle School to celebrate a teacher who really goes the extra mile. 7th grade ELA specialist Eva Carroll. As part of the 7C team, Miss Carroll does more than just teach English. She helps her students find their own voices. She is known for making literature click and for creating a classroom where every kid feels like they belong. Whether she's collaborating with her team or mentoring a student, her passion for Siegel Middle is impossible to miss. For her incredible heart and hard work, our Doug Young Educator of the Month, sponsored by City Tile and Floor Covering, receives a gift certificate to Toots and a beautiful plaque from L&K Trophy. Congratulations, Eva Carroll at Siegel Middle School, and thanks for all you do. To nominate your favorite teacher, go to wgnsradio.com/educator.
From the Fox Sports Studios in Los Angeles, here's Dan Byer.
20-year-old American Alyssa Liu claimed gold in women's figure skating today. She was third after the short program, but took home the top honor after today's free skate. On the ice, women's hockey gold medal game, USA and Canada. They needed overtime.
Canada gets fresh skaters on the ice. The outlet pass for Keller, a defenseman. Nice move, cuts to the net, score! Megan Keller, the overtime hero, United States, wins gold in Milan.
Beating Canada 2-1 on NBC Universal and USA Network. Kenny Albert with the call. Men's speed skating, American speed skater Jordan Stolz took home silver in the 1,500 meters. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, according to ESPN, told the league's general managers that anti-tanking rules should be in place in time for next season. Warriors guard Steph Curry still dealing with swelling in his knee. No timetable for his return to action.
This is Jenny at Ryan Flowers Coffee and Gifts. If you'd like to lift somebody up, we can put together a basket with their favorite coffee, latte, cappuccino, a little snack, and a little bouquet of flowers. Just make their day. So give us a call at 615-893-7134. We're located at 117 South Academy Street, just across the road from East Main Church of Christ.